Sarah, are you guys gonna let people waiting? Yeah, we were waiting until she called it. Okay, that's fine. I'm just getting texts from Laura and Lori. Okay, sure. Yeah.
So let the 4 people in the waiting room. Brandon Alvarez, Laura Klevashewski,
Yes. Yes.
Mike Mosel,
Yes.
and Griffin Hava, 74362. Don't know who that is.
One more time. One more time, I'm sorry.
Griffin, I'll show you. Yes.
Yeah, no. Yeah, just.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Two sessions. One of the most. Second page.
I'd like to call to order the meeting of the policy committee at 7:10. Roll call, me, Glenn, Jess, Kathy, also present the rest of the board administration. Marissa, you'll get the names. Okay. Approval of the agenda. So moved. Second. Kathy and Jess, all in favor? Aye. Approval of the minutes. Minutes. So moved. Second. All in favor? Aye. Public participation. Members of the public and staff may bring to the committee's attention information, ideas, or matters of concern related to all the duties and responsibilities of this committee. This committee will not allow comments regarding specific staff members or personal grievances. The time for individual remarks will be apportioned according to the number of speakers. Thank you. And will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker unless extended by the chair. I'd also like to state that this meeting isn't about whether we're going to use yonder boxes or not use the yonder pouches. It's about what we're going to do because we, as a full board, decided we were going to use the pouches. Okay, first, Ashley Petzel, state your name and address, please.
Ashley Petzel, 517 Oxford Drive.
We get you a mic.
Okay. Pretty loud. Am I good?
Yes.
Ashley Petzel, 517 Oxford Drive. Good evening, board members and fellow members of the Torrington Public School community. My name is Ashley. I'm a junior. I have spoken before, so if you know me, hello. So I know that we know that the policy is we're negotiable, kind of. I know we're using the yonders. So I totally understand how you feel that the yonders phones should not be used during class time. So one recommendation I have is that we could still use these as part of a discipline system, maybe after 3 grievances or even 1 if that's what you guys want to do, then that's when you have to put your phone in a yonder. Phones allow for videos to be taken. I think that's one of the main reasons that you don't want them, like what happened that Thursday after you voted. However, the problem isn't really the videos that are getting out. The problem is that these things are happening. And I don't think the things that are happening within the school are because of cell phones. So I feel like maybe we should do something to target that as well with the yonder implementation. I also feel that maybe we should be able to have them during lunch and study halls if your grades are in good standings. I know personally, I work, I play sports. I don't drive yet, I just turned 16. I'm constantly texting my grandmother or my parents, hey, can you bring me to this place? If she now has to call the school, that's time that I'm leaving class. We just spent all these money on the yonder pouches to better our education. Getting out of class is not bettering my education. So I also heard we're only getting 2 yonder openers, correct me if that's wrong, which I can see that making this plan hard to be able to use them at study hall and lunches. However, we just spent this grand sum of money on these yonder pouches to better our education. That was kind of the consensus you all came for. So I don't see why maybe we could find another grant or spend some money to get more of these openers, if that's what you guys really think yonder is going to help our education. I think having our phones and not being pulled out of class, at least to check them at lunch, should be okay. And I feel like if we need to spend a little bit more money to do that, if the outcome is as great as you guys are saying it is, then why not? We just spent all the money already. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for coming here and having all of you here. I really appreciate it. So have a good night.
Thank you.
Kristen Conway.
Kristen Conway, 27 East Lawn Drive. I'm the parent of 4th and 6th graders. Thank you for taking the time to listen tonight. I want to first start out by saying that I appreciate the idea of the task force, and I was hopeful that you would hear and value parent input. I was not chosen, but my husband was. He works for the State Department of Education. He's very smart, rational, calm, and level-headed, the complete opposite of me. He came home after the middle school task force meeting feeling completely defeated. He was in awe that feedback and questions were dismissed almost immediately. In his words, the task force meetings were all smoke and mirrors, and they never had any intention of hearing what parents had to say. This is disappointing, to say the least. No matter what policy you try to implement, if it is not enforced consistently, it will not work. The major concern from a parent standpoint is, why wasn't the original policy enforced? Why implement such a drastic policy when you didn't give kids the chance to follow the original one? I'm a graduate of Torrington Public Schools. I attended East for kindergarten through 2nd grade, Torringford for 3rd to 5th, Vogel-Wetmore from 6th to halfway through 8th, TMS for the second half of 8th, and THS for 4 years. I loved going to school in Torrington. Did kids get in trouble? Yes. Were we afraid to get in trouble? Yes. We had parents, teachers, and administrators who held us accountable. There was discipline in our schools. Although a very nice man, the very sight of Frank McGowan made me cringe. He didn't let his students get away with anything. We need to get back to holding kids accountable for their actions. Restorative practices simply don't work. The behavior problems you are seeing and dealing with are a direct reflection of that policy. Not only are we teaching kids to be not to be accountable for their actions, but we are also not teaching them to be accountable and responsible adults. It's very sad to think of the disservice we are doing these kids and what we are teaching them. The lack of punishment for their actions is doing long-term damage. If a kid misbehaves in class, is taken out to calm down and sent back to class, we are teaching every kid in that class it's okay to misbehave. Although we don't want to talk about this, the reality is that when girls see boys becoming violent over and over, they will become numb to it. When they are adults, they might allow it to happen to them. Please understand this can happen with girls being violent as well and boys seeing it happen. It's very hard to parent and discipline our kids when it's not happening in school. It's time we start holding our kids accountable, inside and outside of school. While I understand there's a small percentage of parents who don't support discipline and accountability for their child's actions, we must do our part. We must teach the kids that make good choices, that the behavior of the kids that make bad choices will not be tolerated, and they are supported as well. I would like to see yonder pouches used as a form of discipline instead of forcing all kids to use them. Most students are good kids with good grades, and all we are teaching them is that their good behavior and grades don't matter. You were elected to serve us. I will not allow my well-behaved sixth grader who just got high honors with distinction to be needlessly lumped into a group of behavior problems. Thank you.
Mindy Scott?
Hi, Mindy Scott, 135 Norfolk Road. I won't echo what the ladies before me just said. I'm in full agreement with everything they just said, so you don't need to hear it a third time. I have a sophomore. My daughter's here is a sophomore. My son is a senior at Bristol Tech, which is a collaboration with Torrington Public School Districts, which is amazing. Just throwing that out there. My concerns are, again, with the ladies before me, but more around, I need to understand why we're doing this. So I do data analytics for a living. That is what I do. They pay me to find problems, figure out a solve, figure out a cost, and then show the supporting data to obtain that money. I tried really hard to get behind this. I understand that you guys are trying to make the safest choice for our schools, and I sincerely appreciate that. And I really tried to get on board. There's no data. And I've said this in emails. I've said this during our task force, committee. I've said this here. There's no data. Where is the data to support this decision? How many kids are being reprimanded for cell phones? How many teachers have a cell phone policy? How many teachers enforce it? Why or why not? What's going on in the classrooms? We haven't heard from the teachers. You can't make a decision without data. And even now, you've passed the yonder pouches. How do we collectively implement a policy to use these if we don't even have the data? We don't even know the problem we're trying to solve. Taking the phones away from the kids isn't going to solve everything. During our task force meeting, which was amazing, and I have to say for the kids that are here, for the kids that are listening, I am so incredibly impressed with these kids. From the ones that have spoken at this meeting, I've talked to in person, I've seen emails. We're good. Our future generation's good, I feel like, for the first time. They were amazing. But they didn't know there was a problem. None of these kids have said, oh yeah, cell phones are an issue in our classroom. Our teachers complain about it all the time. Our teachers are struggling with some of the kids. No idea that there's a problem. How do we solve a problem if we haven't identified it? I mean, that's huge. There's been a lot of questions from parents from a safety perspective, first and foremost. No answers. There were significant claims made by the yonder folks during their presentation at last month's meeting. I sent an email to everyone on this board. Where's the data to support those statements? I didn't get one response. Not even so much as, we're looking into it, we'll get back to you. I got nothing. That's not effectively working with us as parents, and that's not helping us get behind you and support this. As an adult, as a child, I earned the name Responsible Mindy. That was what my cousins who are always in trouble called me. I'm 43 years old now. I still get called that. I'm a rule follower by nature. It's just what I do. I'm a hot-headed Italian, but I'm a rule follower. And I'm putting that on my kids, and I'm really struggling with this because I'm trying to get behind this, and there's no data to support that. At last week's meeting, all we heard as you guys were talking about budget is we had the data to support that. Oh, I can show you the data for that. Where is the data for this, guys? It's nowhere. It's not discussed in your meetings. I've watched more hours of board meetings than I can tell you. Where's the data? If you want the support, you got to give us the data. And there isn't any. None of the questions have been asked. None of the questions have been answered. More importantly, we haven't heard from the teachers. How do we implement a policy without the information? Thank you.
No one else signed up. Does anyone else wish to speak? Oh, is anyone on the line? Just to speak?
Mike Mosel is raising his hand.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, I'm Michael Moselle. I live at 1947 Torrington Street. I have a daughter that is a freshman in Torrington High School. And being part of the task force with the high school, I believe the meeting went extremely well. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of listening, a lot of note taking. And there's a lot of good ideas going back and forth from the students, the parents, and the administrators. And I believe the administrators that were there and the children that were also explaining, the students that were explaining as well, there was a lot of use for their cell phones throughout the school day, be it making appointments with guidance, communicating back and forth with clubs, teams for sports, after school activities, and with parents as well, in between class, if there's an emergency, if they need to get picked up, if there's a sickness, if whatever it is, the need for cell phones in this day and age is more so than it ever has been. We live in a digital age now. There's no two ways about it. So if there is children, students that are abusing the cell phone policy, going on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, what have you, then of course they should be dealt with accordingly and be punished accordingly. But trying to punish 1,000 students for the handful that are abusing a policy that isn't strictly enforced seems a little heavy-handed. Not to mention the ability to take all the cell phones, put them in the pouches at the beginning of the day, get the students to school, to their class on time, and then at the end of the day, open up all of these pouches, get the students on the bus, and get the buses off so they can be dropped off at school, so the buses can go back to go to the next set of to the middle school, who will also be doing the same thing with the pouches. It seems like a logistical nightmare that we're going to end up with elementary school kids getting home at 8 o'clock at night because of the backlog, because of trying to open up these pouches. So that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Anyone else in the public that would like to speak? Online?
Not getting any more hands?
No? Discussion and next steps. Cell phone policy. Would you mind speaking up a little bit? I'm sorry. Discussion and next steps, cell phone policy. Like you, I don't talk loud.
So from the task force, just so that folks know, so basically we started with the high school task force. And we had students there representing each grade level, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, and they were very articulate and thoughtful and respectful, eloquent. We had our parents who were equally as respectful and really, as Mindy was saying before, really trying to problem solve and work together. We had our 2 board members, Ellen and Kathy, representing the board, and Mrs. Ferguson and myself were there as well. So we started with students, which I think was helpful because they live it, right? And so they cited some things in terms of educational purposes, because that's what we were really talking about. We wanted to have an understanding of what each day looked like for the students and how they were using devices, in particular, obviously, their cell phones. So just educational purposes during class, they give us some examples, apps like a Hoot or a calculator app. The graphing calculators are much less expensive than actually buying the calculator itself. The QR codes that they used to make appointments from in the guidance office, interactive learning experiences, the biology example, which I think Ashley shared with us before, taking pictures of different slides, microscope slides, things that you can't replicate with paper or pencil, or with their Chromebooks at this point, really trying to have creative tech-infused lessons. Obviously, it's much easier with a cell phone. A lot of this was the convenience of it, screenshots, taking notes as the class is ending, before they leave the classroom. Senior privilege sign-up is done through cell phones. Our English language learners rely heavily on their cell phones. There were 2 staff members and the administration there as well. So they gave us that perspective in terms of, even though we didn't have an English language learner represented, sharing that information. Also, the Power School app that students are using regularly, Naviance, apps that are available for monitoring certain behavioral or medical conditions, diabetes, anxiety, and just the convenience overall. The Remind app, just regular schedules, quick internet search, and then receiving updates, as Ashley was talking about, in terms of work schedules, because they may receive those during employers during the day. Parent concerns. Basically, we're living in a digital age. Students have never known any other way. In fact, the last 2 years, it's been their lifeline. We've asked them to use this device every single day. So taking the phones right now is not preparing students for the future. And why punish all students, including those students who are really achieving, focused, and compliant if they're using their cell phones properly. This was a major theme that folks brought up over and over again. Other just basic challenges that the internet signals are not always strong, so it's nice to have the cell phone backup. And parents were uneasy about students not having access to their phones for schedule updates or emergencies. So questions and suggestions of the task force, and this was brought forward by the whole team to us. If high school students will have, because I was actually asking them, we are slated to have MacBooks for our 9th through 12th graders next year. So I really wanted to know if that would help with some of this transition so that cell phones would not be as necessary. Would that help with some of these issues? And so their answer to me was they're still cumbersome because obviously they're bigger. And also if you have access on the MacBooks, then you have as much access on a MacBook as you would on a cell phone. What's the behavioral data that has brought us to this point? One policy or plan seems to be misguided. One size fits all rarely works. How about using yonder pouches as a consequence for policy violation only? Teachers who use the blue pouches typically have 100% compliance. And then the high school task force members suggesting that yonder pouches at the middle school where may be developmentally appropriate. However, at the high school, give students permission to carry their phones and only use the yonder pouches as a disciplinary consequence. So that was at the high school, and I'm going to have Mrs. Ferguson cover the task force notes from the middle school. Same type of configuration, representation, students from each grade, parents from each grade, administration, our lovely board members coming back again, and Mrs. Ferguson as well.
So just note that we invited students from each grade, but only one student showed up. So we did only have one student representative from the middle school. And we had one parent at the middle school not show for the meeting, so just the 2 parents. So the educational uses that were mentioned to us at the middle school task force were, again, the internet is not always reliable. So students use cell phones instead of their Chromebooks on occasion. They're able to take notes on their phones, and they're able to take a quick snapshot of things in class if needed, if time runs out, as they're moving from class to class. But the other thing before we even go forward with this, it's important to be aware that at the middle school, cell phones are not to be seen or heard during the day at all, unless a teacher says to students, you may take out your phones for XYZ purpose. I think that's important. Some of the challenges are that it was readily admitted that some students do abuse their phones and they lose learning time and it becomes a distraction. Thought was that students should be able to use phones during their flex periods. We also learned about something that you probably all know about that was new to me, FOMO, fear of missing out. So we talked about that as both a benefit and a disadvantage, that if students did not have their phones during the school day, there would not be that burning need to constantly be looking at it for fear of missing out. So that came up. We talked about that for a little bit. Some parent questions and suggestions. Was the original policy enforced? And then Mr. Scott, the principal, explained how they handled that at the middle school. Again, what is the behavioral data? How many students are actually getting in trouble as a result of abusing, carrying a phone? There was concern expressed that some students need access to medical apps. Is it possible, it was asked, that some students be allowed to use during flex and at lunch, and only if they're not complying with the policy, then pouches could be used. There was a question about surveys. Why were parents and students not surveyed? We explained that a survey did go out much earlier in the year about cell phone usage. There was another request that more surveys be sent out asking parents and students what their specific usage needs are with respect to phones. It was also brought up that you can go on the internet and you can find videos that actually teach you how to destroy yonder pouches. So we are aware of that. The board is aware of that. Suggested that reward students who do adhere to the policy. Can those students who abuse the cell phone policy have the pouch, but not the students who are coming to school and doing what they should be doing every day? The thought was that by issuing a yonder pouch to all students at TMS, it would be viewed as a punishment. If there's a violation of the policy at the middle school, parents should come to get the phone. So that does happen. That is part of the procedure that's in place at the middle school. There was a feeling that parents were not actively involved in the process. Why didn't parents know that cell phones were an issue at the school? The suggestion was, please enforce the current policy. It's not necessary to spend money on pouches. There was some logistical questions. How long does it actually take to put a phone into a pouch? How much learning time is that going to take away? And we explained all of that. There was a request that more communication come out regarding board meetings and what topics will be discussed at board meetings. We explained how parents can access that information. Then if the board is to implement yonder pouches, the request was that it start at the beginning of the school year, which would be a natural transition. Someone asked about the new Dean of Discipline position. With that new position in place, could that person be kind of the cell phone police? Let's see, what else? Mr. Scott clarified what the policy is at the middle school. He shared with the group that 165 students, as of in trimester 2, 165 students brought cell phones to school and used them in such a way that parents needed to be called to the school to come and collect the phones. And that on that day, which was last Thursday, there were at least 30 plus phones in the main office on a cell phone contract, which means at the middle school that students who are on a cell phone contract have violated the policy at the school enough times that when they arrive at school every day, they have to drop their phone at the main office and they cannot get it back until they leave at the end of the school day. Social media, we talked about social media quite a bit, recognizing that cell phones are not only an issue during the school day, but after school as well. Social media often exacerbates the problem. We learned that bathrooms are an area at the middle school where students gather to check their phones. And very often, students, many students are tardy to class because they have slipped into the bathroom to check their cell phones. There were a couple of teachers on the middle school task force who very strongly spoke in support of a Yonder Pouch program at Torrington Middle School. The teachers both said that they don't believe there's any benefit for middle school students to have a cell phone at that level. They felt that in addition to it being a problem, and I know this to be true myself, the cell phone service is not really strong at Torrington Middle School, so you really do have to depend on computers. Students will ask to use phones for photos of work or notes and then put them away. And if the teacher deems that to be appropriate, then they say, yes, of course, this is an appropriate time to take out your phone and use it for this purpose. The teachers believe that phones create a distraction when you need to ask a student who's abusing the phone to put it away, and the entire class has to stop what they're doing to wait for that child to comply. And in many cases, there is not immediate compliance, which then requires a call to the office to seek administrative support, which again takes away learning time throughout the day. Parents spoke about the concern if a student drastically needed to get in touch with a parent, you know, how would that happen? So we talked about that. And the teachers also said that they believe that very few students at the middle school level can use those phones appropriately in school. Again, we talked about the fear of missing out. Parents were concerned because they felt that the notion of regulating cell phone use in school came out of nowhere. So we explained that it's actually been discussed at board meetings for 3 years. So it has been a topic of policy and of school improvement for quite some time. We explained that what the board is attempting to do is not to punish students, but rather create an optimal learning environment. And it's meant to help students be available for learning. Everyone agreed that the pandemic has created isolation and social anxiety and a greater dependence on phones. We talked about the unlocking devices, the kiosks, what those devices look like and how they work and where they will be located at the middle school. We talked about what the pouches actually look like. Explained that every student would be assigned a pouch for the year and that they would be responsible for keeping that pouch intact. We talked about the board's idea to perhaps start right after spring break to kind of work out the kinks before the start of the next school year. The thought was that this would allow for adjustments of the policy during the summer if needed. We explained that the board is going to draft a policy with the input of both the middle school and the high school task forces. We also provided everyone at that meeting with an email address to which they could send opinions, concerns, comments. And then the board members invited everyone at the task force to please attend policy committee meetings regarding this issue and any others.
Sorry, there's people on the calling line that wanted to speak at public comment. Do you know how to access those people? I'm sorry.
Okay, sure.
They're not on the Zoom, but they're on the.
Or were they at the
Did they post in the chat or
They're trying to use the call-in numbers?
Yeah.
oh,
That's the problem. We don't have one of those phones with us for that right now. Are they texting?
Yeah.
Can you?
Because they
Can you
That's what it
send
says.
them the link?
Yeah, that's the thing, was on the agenda. I saw the.
We weren't provided with.
Can they just call on your phone and put it next to it?
We can do that, if you're okay with that.
Just call it for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So- And just put the phone by the microphone.
Okay, sure. Do you know?
That should work.
I know the one person, but I don't know if there's other people.
We won't be able to still have to get their address, just the Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we will be able to hear.
Yes, oh, yes, of course, yeah.
Can you give Zoom access?
They have, link, did we send that?
Right, there is a link.
Yeah.
Do they have the agenda?
I think so.
If they try that.
The
Should be able
agenda
to
only
get
has the
in.
link for the video.
They can't get in.
Not with the video, no.
They don't have the Zoom, just set, change
Right,
it to
that is
video for
the
the public.
Uh,
There's no Zoom,
Okay.
Zoom access.
Yeah,
Right.
okay. So Trey is gonna have to either do your phone or I think that's the best bet. If you don't mind.
Hey, I'm gonna just.
Yeah. Yeah. They want,
Yeah.
We're just asking.
Yes. Yeah.
my work phone has a battery, they can call my work. By Torrington. Why don't you do that instead of a personal phone? That's what I'm saying. It's my
Yeah.
connectivity.
So just call, just get him on that phone.
I got 62%.
What's the number?
860, I never call myself. 860-307-1527.
They can't figure it out. This, they can't figure it out. You can change
1527.
email.
No, I know. You're doing great.
Most people.
They're calling Kim's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Can you post in the video meeting?
No, it's just a recording of.
No.
Right.
Hello? Oh, Mr. Lafreniere.
Well, hello, Mr. Lafreniere, we're putting you by the microphone now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just leave it.
Sorry about that.
Hey, go ahead.
Jason.
Okay, Jason Lafreniere, special education teacher, Torrington Middle School. I live in Byron Drive in Granby, Connecticut. I know that, thank you, Ms. Ferguson, for giving out the information that you heard from teachers at the task force. And yet here's another teacher giving some more information about cell phones in school. On a daily basis, I'm taking multiple phones away from a variety of students: National Junior Honor Society students, athletes, regular education, special education students, all students. Those phones get turned into administration, and it is my understanding that parents are notified. Unfortunately, I find myself taking a phone away from those same students later in the week, even the next day. I know I'm not the only teacher doing this. I see students on phones on a daily basis rather than doing work or listening to lessons. I've heard that students plan to buck the system with burner phones, and I'm worried that there are parents that are encouraging students to do this. What are you teaching your child by giving them the opportunity or a means to not follow a policy that is put in place? Whatever policy you put in place without procedure that supports that policy, without students, family, staff, and administration buying into this initiative, it will not work. By making this a discipline policy and not all inclusive for all students, you're going to create more work and more opportunities for interpretation of what happens to phones that are found to be used. Anything that is brought up for the use of the phone during the school day can wait or be completed in other ways. Every student has a laptop. I'm confident that if there is a medical or legally binding plan in place, such as a 504 or IEP, that requires a student to use the phone, that you as a board will ensure that takes place. It is included in the policy. Again, the procedures must match the policy and it must be adhered to by all. I'm a teacher, not the phone police. I want to teach. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Sounds like it's hung up.
So if there's anyone that is trying to dial in and is not able to, you can email me, Fiona Capabianca. The email address is on the website, and I'll be sure that the board gets it. Thank you.
So first we'll go to the members.
My initial comment is a suggestion that we look at the beginning of next school year as a target date for the implementation of that. I think that would allow us a better amount of time to create policies. You know, I read through these meeting notes and I really appreciate the input. I don't see much in here that couldn't be handled in a different way if we have the time to thoughtfully do that. And I think that would really be what would put us in the position to succeed and to have what we want. What we want is something that everybody understands, people can get behind, whether or not initially is something that we were warm to, and something that makes our schools a safer and more orderly place and a place more conducive to learning. And doing that in a thoughtful way and not rushing it at this point, because there is only a month between now and the April vacation. And that seems like not enough time for us to do this in a thoughtful manner and make sure that we are considering everything that we need to consider. So that I'm going to throw that out there as my initial discussion.
Well, I sat in on both task force at the high school and at the middle school. And I heard two very different messages, I'm going to be honest. I think what I heard at the high school was that, you know, and I do tend to agree with Jess on that part, that our high school students were very clear and very responsible with their comments. I can't say enough about them. They were so articulate and listened and participated with us, and many of the points that they made were well taken. And I think I agree that it would be best for us to possibly put it off until September with our, they want it to be in place, that they feel that they'll be able to teach more effectively. And I think our job as Board of Ed members is to really preserve learning time for our students. And I think if we can draft a policy that we feel is the right policy and can be effective, I believe we should still move forward for our middle school for an April 25th date. That's the day after April break, I believe, the 25th. And I think in that way, our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders will have the opportunity to use the younger pouches, and our 8th graders will then come to Torrington High with a semester or a few months of using the pouches under their belts. So that would be my recommendation.
I don't have anything to say right now. I'll pass.
Gary Euclido. I'm going to start with, I think the public completely misunderstands what we're trying to accomplish here. It's been talked about since I got on the board 5 years ago. It is a health crisis, and there's lots of data on that. There are hundreds of studies that are now available on the health crisis with cell phones. Personally know one child in my family who, as a result of some texting, took drastic steps because of some bullying. And it's not just that one. There have been more than one in our school system. But there's nothing in that list that tells us it serves an educational purpose. And the cell phone, in my opinion, and this is, again, numerous studies, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Psychologists and Psychiatry, tech giants. Nobody suggests that cell phones do anything for children in the school system. Now that we have IMAX that are coming, now that we have computers, they take care of all whatever educational need there may be. I've got stacks of things which I wish people would go and take a look and do the research. My job as a board member is to look to see what benefits all children, not individually. I've had 6 children that went to the Torrington school system. One completely addicted to her cell phone was an honor student. Had a very difficult time her freshman year in college, adjusting. The others were a little bit older, but it's not the teacher's responsibility, in my opinion, to monitor what goes on in the classroom. And no matter what everybody says in this room, every person, including honor students that I've talked to, take their cell phone out during the school day and check their phone. And there are numerous studies that will tell you that. I never heard of phone until I read the study, but it's one of the biggest problems for kids with anxiety, and the #1 cause of anxiety and depression they're pointing to among teenagers is the cell phone. Now, they can use it in the morning, they can use it at night, but in school, it is a place for kids to learn. If we're providing a computer for these children, I don't want to impose the cost. And I'm not going to ask a question of anybody in this room tonight who might be involved at the high school level, because it's not fair. But as we've been told, 60% of every single incident roughly at the high school is a cell phone. 100% of the incidents roughly involve a cell phone at the high school. Forget the middle school. So I'm not saying I'm not willing to compromise as to how we go about this with the middle school and the high school. The middle school has to happen tomorrow, in my opinion. But parents need to understand that this isn't an addiction. And I'll finish with one thing I've told many parents. I have addiction in my family. I would never send my child to school if he was a heroin addict with heroin in his pocket, expecting him not to grab that heroin during the school day. And if anybody thinks that is not the same addiction, do your research, because there is numerous research of brain activity that equates. And again, laughter is not something I can deal with it. I can deal with it because my job is to make sure these kids get out of our schools safe, and that's my role, educated, and that parents do their research on the influence of cell phones. We've only had 12 emails from parents. So there's another 2,600 that have not responded to the problems that everybody else sees with these pouches. These pouches simply say, put it in the morning, don't use it during the day. Use it at home and your parents know what you're doing with it. We lose all control over what the kids do on cell phones during the day. And they use it for pornography, they use it to cheat, they use it to text to their friends. And if I can't tell you what happens in these explosions or these other things that happen, but I suspect you can find out from some of the administrators at the high school what these things are being used for. Coordinating fights, and it's not just honor students. So as my role as a Board of Education member is to raise the grades in the school system, knowing full well the data supports taking cell phones out of the school actually raises grades. Help the children learn to become more engaging. Get rid of some of the anxiety and depression associated with cell phone usage, and let them enjoy the education process for 7 hours a day, and not be concerned about who's texting them during the day. And again, I could compromise on high school and middle school. We talked about that already. But everybody needs to look at this really as a problem, and not simply. It's not something the kids should be getting as a present because they have good grades. My kids all were honor students. But I would never say I'm going to increase your hours on the cell phone because you're honor students. I would say your grades reflect how hard you work, and the benefit of hard work is your grades and getting into a better school or a better job. But I'm not willing as a board member to say we should reward kids with cell phone use because they're good students or because they're good kids. And we all see the benefit, what happens with cell phones when we have riots. And it's really tarnished Torrington's image. Those videos spread around the country. And I failed as a board member in the past to try to push harder for better discipline and better understanding of cell phones. But I did start 5 years ago. Nobody was listening.
Don't look at me like that.
Okay.
No, listen,
You're the
I,
next in line.
yeah, most people know that I will deliver a lecture on any subject at any time. But I'm gonna pass on it tonight because I think and certainly every member of the board has heard what I think about cell phones. I don't need to repeat it. But we're here now, right? So while it's not my preference to be here doing this, we are. So that being said, I just want to kind of focus in on where I think there's been a little bit of consensus so far around the table, which is that, you know, we may be able to reach an agreement as members of the board to implement a tight, you know, yonder focused cell phone policy at the middle school by, you know, roughly the end of April. And we might be interested in pushing the implementation at the high school out to the beginning of the next school year. And I'd be interested in that as well, because again, while it's not my preference to be doing this, I think our interest has to be in doing it right if it's going to happen. And I think the most important thing that Ms. Ferguson said in going over what she heard as part of these middle school task forces is that cell phone usage really doesn't have an appropriate educational or social use in schools for students at the middle school level. And I do agree with that, and I do believe that. But the high school, as we've clearly heard many times from many people on all sides of the, you know, in every position in this argument, that there are some things that are important in regards to cell phone use at present at the high school. And so if the board is going to implement the underpouches, which it is, then it would be worth our time and a little more of our time to make sure that we agree as much as we can as a group in every way about how the policy is going to look. If there are to be any exceptions, and if so, what they are to be, what the consequences are, because I think it's a lot more of a dynamic issue at the high school level than it is at the middle school level. I mean, I was 11 years old in 8th grade, and while I know that's not the norm, there's no way I needed a cell phone, you know, and I didn't have it at 11. But it's a little bit different at the high school level. And I think also that the students are a little more invested and have a lot more to say at the high school level. So it'd be worth our time to work on it moving forward to September instead of forward to April. That's how I feel about it.
John?
And just to finish a thought or add to a thought on the middle school, it seems the middle school is halfway there already, because there seems to be, for what the teach, now it's hard to compare these two task force reports because they're not structured the same. But it seems like the middle school is already close to being able to control the situation. So a little bit of help from the policy committee and the full board, maybe Mr. Scott and his administrators can get this moving fast. So I would say yes, April, middle school, yonder.
Sue?
I definitely could go along with the split of middle school, April, high school in September. And mostly because a lot of things came to light through your task force meetings with parents and students. You know, we have talked about the cell phones ad nauseum, and we don't need to go down that route anymore. As far as like the things that came to light for us, cell phone usage in the curriculum has never, ever been brought to our attention. If it had, we could have been having different conversations. And that's very disheartening for us as a board. And to have sustained and gone through all of the ridicule and everything else that we've gone through over the last 3 or 4 weeks has no impact on the decision that I'm making right now as a board member. I'm just thinking as far as implementation goes, ideally, I would like to see them both rolled out in April, but I do understand that to be more effective, the middle school is almost there, more than halfway there, John, I agree with you.
Closer, much closer.
Yeah, so I think it will be easier to implement. But as a side note, as far as data goes, and people wanting to hear data, our trimester started March 2nd or 3rd of this year. So today's the 22nd. Torrington Middle School has confiscated 162 phones. Torrington High School, 55. And I think someone had already, Sue had gone over these numbers and what she read back to us. That's a problem. That's a huge problem.
It's not even.
What's that?
Okay, can we, we'll let the board members speak and then we'll open it up to, I promise you.
The 162 is for the full year, not just for the.
Are you sure it's not the trimester?
It says trimester too.
Yeah, it's the trimester, so it's a couple of weeks worth of data. So if we want to go back to August, not just 2 weeks, 162 in one building in 2 weeks is a lot. That's an issue. So we're not talking about the whole year, and the numbers are staggering. Gary has plenty of information. I'm sure you'd be willing to share it with the whole town. As far as the abuses and the personal information that we can't share with the public of what we see every single day is what brought us to this decision. You gave us enough credit when you voted us in, and now all of a sudden we make one bad decision and it's the end of the world.
Nikki?
I think, our goal in rolling out any policy, right, is for them to be effective. And I think I'm in support of kind of Jess's recommendation in waiting for September for both, only due to all of the implementation of the administrative, needs that need to happen between now and then. I think we'd be rushing it if we didn't give enough time for that due diligence to be done effectively, even with some wiggle room, because implementation is what's going to make this succeed. So, if we.
Implementation and enforcement.
And enforcement, right, and I think to get enforcement, all staff, teachers, everyone needs to be on the same page on what's gonna happen, and I think there needs to be time for the administrators to do that.
I'm not on the policy committee, but have been part of these conversations for at least 5 years. I might argue longer. I still have not heard any valid educational reason to have cell phones. I don't know how as a society we got to a point where parents are contacting their students all throughout the day through text. Some are FaceTiming their kids, some are calling their kids. It's insanity. Your kids are at school to learn, 1. 2, to find out during this process that there's a remind system, which other schools use, but it's utilized after hours. So we're also reminding kids during the day of things they have to do outside of the school day, which may be also creating some of the anxiety. The city has invested a lot of money into computers for kids to be accessing the work that they need to do. We are a public school system. We should not be relying on kids bringing in personal cell phones to be able to get an education in the Torrington Public Schools. It's not okay. We are not a private school. We're a public school. Even everyone says, my kid is not doing anything wrong in the policy. However, there is not a student that is not on their phone during the day. All of that is a distraction. Then you add to that, everyone says, let the teachers deal with the problems. Every teacher times all the periods a day, times 20 or 25 kids, has to address specific cell phones. I don't want teachers having struggles among students over cell phones. And your child might not be seeing it, might not be reporting it, might be the ones abusing it. We see it in expulsions, we hear about it daily. I'm tired of hearing about it. As our grades continue to decline, there's some serious problems going on with cell phones. Just like all of you guys know what's going on in your home with your families, we know what's going on in the schools. So this isn't new. The policy, it's not even about enforcement. It's about every single person having to deal with this times every single kid. You want to talk about the cell phones are a better option than laptops because the laptops are slow. Maybe if 2,000 people weren't hyping into our Wi-Fi every day, it would speed up the computers. So I'm just saying, but for parents to tell their students to defy a policy and don't do this, don't give them your phone, it's your right. It's not right, and you're not helping your students. It's about respect. They should have respect for the people in the building. They should have respect for the policies. What happened the day after our last meeting was a complete embarrassment to Torrington, and anyone that supports that has to really evaluate what they want our town to be looked at. We have invested in a new school for all of our kids. We owe it to the taxpayers of this town that pay for this education to give the best opportunities we can for our students to succeed. And if you don't agree with that, vote me out, because I am not on this board to make friends. I am on this board to make sure the kids have the best educational opportunities available to them, and that is every kid in the school system. So everyone can say it's not them. I can assure you that it is all of them.
Excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. Thank you. No, Glenn,
I passed.
you still pass?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm going.
Briefly, then I want to hear from.
Back up.
Ellen can read.
I don't know what you're doing.
I-
You're not speaking. I don't know what you're saying.
I'm speaking to you briefly, please, and then I want to hear from anyone who wants to speak. Not yell out while someone else is speaking. Just okay, even if you wait, please, go ahead.
I will jump in with you. There's nobody in this room that has spent more hours than that woman and these two board members specifically. The vitriol, the attacks, the ignorance thrown at these two, almost to the point of never wanting to go out of their house because of the things that people have written to us. I have big shoulders, broad shoulders, a lot of kids, I can handle it. You guys can say what you want about me. My job isn't here for this child or that child. It's for all children, all taxpayers. If you don't think, I'll say it again, if you don't think this is a problem, then you're ignoring what the system is defined to accomplish, and you're not listening to what we've been going through over the last 3 to 4 years. Again, I'll repeat, my job as a Board of Ed member is to fix the damn school system. Everybody complains about discipline, but if 60 to 70% of these issues involve a cell phone, that's the first thing I go after as a businessman. The biggest problem. Fix that problem, and you solve many of the discipline issues. It's not about your daughter being able to call you. It's not about your daughter being able, or your son, to use an app. It's not. There is no educational benefit to those things. That's what we're supposed to do. Provide a process and a system that educates our children. I have 6 kids, 4 did great, 2 didn't. Nothing to do with cell phones. It was their behavior. But we cannot have a system that allows certain kids to use phones and others not to. We can't have a system that says you put yours in your pouch and you don't have to put your, it's impossible because that rests on the teachers. You want to talk about money? To have somebody standing in the let's use the cafeteria to take kids out, take their phone out because you're a good kid, we'll put it back in. It's 3 or 4 shifts of school of
3 right now.
3 right now. It'll be 4 possibly.
Great.
2 people in each of those rooms just to open pouches and close them. It's $160,000 a year. This is not a fix. This is one attempt to stem the tide of misbehavior by every kid in that school, because our policy, not the high school, but the middle school says no cell phones. The policy will become no cell phones in high school. So every child that thinks they can open up their cell phone and look at it and check a text message is no longer complying with our policy. So I think the next question will, if we do impose that policy, will you tell us to ignore it? Will you tell us to allow certain kids to check their phones and not others? Certain kids to go to the bathrooms and use their phone, because kids do it all the time. Every kid finds a way to do it. I know some kids who are afraid. I have lots of kids that I mentor, afraid to go to the bathrooms because of who might be there. Not the bad kids only, but just because of what's going on in the bathrooms. We need to fix the system, and it starts with a lot of different steps, one of which is addressing The one issue at the high school, I'm told that's almost 100% of every single instance that goes out there, which is involvement of a phone. And I wish that more parents would come to our meetings. We haven't had a huge response other than 12 or 15 parents against our plan. So I will go with the public, which has not outcried. And I know that many people at the high school have received calls and they're in favor of us going with this plan. But that said, I'm going with it because it's better for the kids. It'll help the mental health issues. It'll help the grades. And I can give you all the data you need to support that, because you can't give me one study that says the opposite. And if we have a data expert, bring it to me, because there's not a study that says that, other than one by the National Education Association. But I'm with you. If it's a problem, vote me out. Take my seat tomorrow, because it's 4 days a week and nobody in this room is willing to step up. And I've asked people in this room to step up. So, you want it? Come sit. You can have it right now. I'll give it up to you right now.
Okay. so-
No, I'm serious.
Okay.
You want it? Step up.
Gary, yeah, Gary, point of order.
My job is to let the public know we're serious.
It's all of
And
our
one
jobs.
other thing, I know, but I'm talking. The other thing is, if we do it at the high school, my support will be for high school only, it's in the spring, in the fall, if there's teeth. Because don't let the kids think it's gonna be easy and they can have their phones on. I've been in that school. And I can tell you, there isn't a kid I didn't see that didn't have things in their ears, phones out, and activities happening. So, and I think the young lady who speaks eloquently, I know, Mom. We need to flesh out all the issues and make it count for the seniors that are coming up and what's happening with the high school. Get us through the rest of the year, but there has to be teeth. Because the kids who aren't using their phones in the school, they're straight A students, they will have no problem putting their phones in their backpacks and never taking them out. And then we'll know at the end of the year how many instances there were. But I do appreciate the wonderful kids we have in the schools.
So I think we all agree. Cell phones really don't belong in school. The teachers need to teach. We've heard that time and time. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? We hear that time and time again. Teachers need to teach, especially at the middle school level. They're just not ready to have their phones, to use them appropriately. I'm in the same camp as Kathy. Middle school implement as soon as we can, and high school perhaps next year. We had great feedback from a lot of the teachers, the parents, and the students themselves. Everyone spoke eloquently. But the teachers, more and more and more, it's, we can't teach, we need to teach. We're spending too much time, put your phone away, don't use your phone. Okay, use your phone because you know what, I have to teach over here. If we have a strong enough policy that can be adhered to, which will be adhered to, then I think it would be a better environment for everyone involved. We've also heard from administrators that it's quite an issue. But we've been hearing as the board this for a very long time, longer than 5 years that I've been on the board. But it is an issue. We need to look at it now. And I open it up to, if you raise your hand, I will call on you and you can have, a comment or what have you, one at a time. Yep.
Restate my address again.
No, just if you have a question for us.
Yeah, I have quite a few questions actually. So first, I wrote a 7-9-page paper. I don't know if anyone reads it. I would appreciate it if you were honest with me, if you read it or not. I mean, I don't think I would have, but that's kind of your job. You said we never brought up any of those educational points. I would say there's a good 3 pages. If anyone needs me to re-email that to them.
In the last 4 weeks, that's when we received that information.
Mhm.
That wasn't made, we weren't made aware of that over the last 5 years.
Okay, but that was brought to you before you voted. But anyways,
okay.
No, but go ahead.
I had emailed it out and printed out copies that no one took.
Right.
Yes, but do you have a question?
Yeah, that was my question. I was just asking if anyone read it and saw those points. So you mentioned about the health issues that come along with the cell phones. how are those like health issues any different from sitting in front of my computer all day where I can access Instagram, and if it's a MacBook, I can access text messaging?
I'll
Not
answer
for
it
long.
quickly. We will shut those off.
Yeah.
That'll be the next step, just so you know. They shouldn't be on there. You're right, they should not be on there. Those are things, you're exceptionally bright. I know, you're an exceptionally bright girl. But at the same time, you will never find a study that says to you, if you did access, and I know you didn't, but if you did, it isn't distracting you from what you should be doing. And granted, you're exceptionally bright, but you are the exception. And our job as a board of ed is to educate everybody with the best tools available. And the laptops should not have access to those things, and we will hopefully, as a board, decide to get rid of them. Find a way, one step at a time to get rid of them.
We will address that.
Right.
Because other people want to speak, can, like you.
Yeah, no worries. I'll just email them to you.
All right, thank you.
I'm Megan McCall. I just want to say, it has never been about the cell phone for me, to be quite honest. It has been about the communication and the transparency. I know that you have been talking about this for 5 years. I do not come to every board meeting because I work out of town. I have active children. I'm not able to be at every board meeting. I trust the people that I elected to be here to do that job. Gary did ask me if I would step up and do the job, and I said, no way. So I thank you for your work that you do. But I don't believe the steps were in place to listen to the public, to roll this out in a way that people were, you have spoken about this for 5 years. You have the data, you have the information. The rest of us don't. So what did kind of come out of the blue for us? I haven't received emails from my children's school telling me how horrible the cell phone problem is in any area whatsoever. I haven't heard about the issues going on with cell phones. You have. We missed a step. We missed a step in getting that information out. I also think you missed a step in listening to the kids when they spoke that night, and a lot of that anger that came as a result of your vote was because those kids spoke beautifully and elegant. They just did a beautiful research-based arguments to you about how they felt, and you turned and you voted anyway, right in front of their face. You could have tabled it for a week. You couldn't have changed your vote at all. I don't care, but let them feel heard. I don't think anybody was felt heard. I don't think the public knows truly what you know. And there's gotta be a way to get that information out. I appreciate the change in what I have seen recently with getting an email about what the agenda is for the board meeting. That was the first time I ever received that, and I really appreciated that. That's a step in the right direction for getting people more involved to say, that's an issue I want to hear about. That's a board meeting I'm going to go to. So I appreciate that. I think that's a step in a great direction.
To your first point, the teachers were handling the situation in their classroom. So they wouldn't broadcast to everyone, these are issues. They would tell their principal or what have you. And that's how it got to us. Okay, to your first point. The second point, we did hear everything that the kids said. We just didn't vote the way they thought that we should vote.
I understand that, but my point is just give them a minute to feel heard. Let them take a breath and let them feel heard.
But that's why we did the task force.
Okay.
And we
I
did
hope
hear them
those-
that night.
I hope so.
And we listened.
We
I hope
listened that
so.
night. All of us listened that night. We just didn't vote the way that they thought that we should vote.
Okay, all right. I just
They
feel
weren't
like,
heard.
I just feel like I know the hours that you put in, and I know that you have gone through the research and you have done your due diligence. I know that, and I know it probably is a problem, but I've never had an administrator come to me and say, it is out of control, we have to do something.
Correct.
And I wanted to have that conversation prior to this coming into place.
Well, the administrators, when the problem arose, spoke to the person that the problem started from, so the parent, okay? So if there was a problem with a child,
Right,
my
I
child,
understand that.
I would find out.
I
But
understand
if
that.
there wasn't with yours, you wouldn't find out.
But if it's rampant and it's the biggest issue at the school, we should probably hear about that.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Really just more of a comment. I said it when I first spoke here tonight at 7 o'clock. I will not allow you to put my daughter in a box. Fiona, this goes directly to you. I promise you, my daughter's phone is not out during the day. I promise you. I guarantee anyone on this board the next 5 years of my salary. I guarantee you my daughter does not touch her phone. So please, when you say you don't think it's happening to your child, I guarantee you I know. I know that for a fact. On September 29, 2010, the day my daughter was born, I took an oath to protect her, and I will not let you put her in that box. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just also have a comment. As far as the apps go, Sue, I totally understand your point that, you know, you guys didn't have that information. That's a red flag though. That's, that, you know what I mean? The teacher should have been involved in that immediately. So during our task force, I took notes because I have an awful memory. This whole page is what they use it for in the schools. The guidance counselors that were in our task force mentioned, and I don't quote me, but I believe she said something along the lines of, God, I hope you guys have money for more staff because we utilize those phones all the time with the students who don't speak English. We utilize, and she had a whole, you know, she had a whole list. That's a, you know, that's a gap. That information and data should have been collected before a decision was made at the end of the day. To your point, I hear what you're saying, and I'm sorry for your nephew.
No.
And I agree. Kids can be awful, and in some cases, you know.
That's the reason I'm doing this.
No, I know, but I just wanted you to know I sympathize with you, and I do agree that that's a problem. But one of the things that we talked about during that task force as well is the situations where during the school day, if things escalate, it goes to social media, et cetera, et cetera. The guidance counselor said every single day they're dealing with that stuff that's happening outside of school. It comes right into school the next day. So shutting that off during the day it's not gonna stop anything. Those kids bring it right into school when they're in person the following day. So it's not gonna stop that. We need to focus on what is wrong in our schools. Kids are not afraid to go in the bathroom because of cell phones. They're afraid to go in the bathroom because we have drugs in our school. We have bullies in our school. We have people not parenting their kids. And those are the problems. Right, like, you know, and I appreciate the concern about how our town looks. But I encourage you to not make those statements publicly. And I will explain why. And I can say this because this person no longer works in Torrington School District. My daughter was bullied in 8th grade. 4 straight days, these girls were cornering out her locker. The teacher saw, it was a whole big thing. There was a fight in front of that school. My daughter's never even so much as gotten a bus detention. I went to the school and the first thing the principal said to my daughter, I'd never met this man before. 10 seconds, literally walks in, says, I'm so-and-so, shakes my hand, looks at my daughter and says, oh, you kids videotape everything these days. How do you think that makes my school look on the internet? Not, are you okay? What happened? You don't get in trouble. How are you in a fight in front of the school? It's how my town looks. That shouldn't be a priority. That should not be a priority. What's happening in our town and in our schools is the priority, not how someone else is viewing us.
I think I made that clear. My reasons are mental. If you don't want to check with all the medical experts out there, that's okay. But I'm going with what the actual research says, and not just in here, but nationally. Every school is addressing this. Countries have banned them completely from schools because of it. My attempt here, and it started 5 years ago, was anticipating the problems with technology to a point where you can't keep up as a parent or as educators. And then things like TikTok and all those other things, they are designed to be addictive. You can deny it all you want.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that.
So just to finish it off, 7 hours of no cell phone in the school where they can actually communicate is the perfect example, according to many studies, to get these children to a point which they actually can get out of our high school and participate better at the college level or in work. That is our job, to get them out of school, the best grades, or ready for the best job that they can have. And having a cell phone in school does none of that. It doesn't.
Oh, I totally
That's
agree.
all. That's all.
Yeah, no,
That's
and
my point.
I don't necessarily
I
disagree
appreciate
with that,
that.
but you have to have solutions for the problems that we're bringing. You can't keep my kids safe. That's first and foremost. We heard that over and over and over again, right? You have to have solutions for all these other concerns, the kids that use the apps for their anxiety. You have to have an answer for all of that. You can't just remove everything. I appreciate you seeing the data too around the last couple of weeks. But even the 55 of the high school, it comes down to what, 5.5%, 6%? That's not, we're punishing all of these kids for such a small amount. And unfortunately, that same percent of kids, they're not gonna put their phones in there. They're not.
We're not punishing. We're giving the kids an opportunity to learn without being distracted.
I'd rather my kids learn without drugs and being afraid to go in the bathroom. Thanks.
Go ahead, please. Sure. I genuinely mean this. Why did it take cell phones for you to bring up, and I've heard this from a lot of parents. Cell phones is like this catalyst for all these other things. I've never heard one parent, I've been on the board for 2 years, has emailed me to say, my kids aren't safe in schools. Why now? Why is it the cell phones that is causing parents to speak up about that, or drugs? Why weren't those the things that kind of, I rated you through the I rated you to come to the board and, stand your truth?
So I used to be very involved. As a matter of fact, I went after the mayor for trying to cut the budget a few years back. I have 2 kids, I have a full-time job, and we're all doing what we can. My husband's a business owner. The cell phones for me, the trigger immediately wasn't, oh, my kid can't use their cell phone. It was the safety right off the bat. Like, I want my child to be able to communicate with me. I need to know what's going on in that school because there's been too many instances where that's not happening. Safety, absolutely 110% was my immediate hell no, this isn't happening for me, because she can communicate if something's going on in the bathroom, for example. You know what I'm saying? But not having that line of communication where she's in an environment that you're not safe in schools anymore in this day and age. You're just not. And I wish that wasn't the case. But for me, that was my immediate reaction was safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to speak?
Yeah, sure. I hate public speaking, but I'm
You've been in the back.
So I actually don't want to talk about the yonder pouches. It does have to do with cell phones. So I'm huge on ABA, and the one thing they teach us in ABA is not to be reactive, but to be proactive. So we know that pouches are coming in some shape or form, so that's our reactive strategy, but I'd like to build in some proactive strategies. For example, I don't know what the class is called anymore, but at the high school, they do science of learning. Maybe we can implement teaching kids how to properly use their cell phones in an environment. We're locking them up when they get out of high school and they go off to college. They're not gonna have anyone locking up their cell phones, so we could teach them. I'd also like to see in our lockdown procedures that we also talk about cell phones. We say that the cell phones boggle up the lines and cause more issues, and we need to be teaching kids that, not just taking their cell phones away. We need to teach them how to use these devices because they are powerful tools, how to use them correctly. So my only comment is now that we've done the reactive, let's go look at proactive. That's all. Thank you.
I'm gonna try to be respectful. I understand you guys put hours, hundreds and hundreds of hours into what you do.
Excuse me, your name?
Joe Gallant.
Thank you.
And as hard as that is, when you try to shove something down people's throats, they're not gonna react well. And my kid not having a cell phone during the day, the cell phone's not my problem. How this got rolled out, so to speak, I got no email, nothing. I never heard the word yonder in my life until a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago, when this started. Never heard the word. But I have a daughter who's in 6th grade, just loves school forever. This year, she has cried probably more days getting on the bus. I've had to make her get on the bus. I've had to make her go to school. And for the communication part, we've talked to counselors. She's in counseling now for that reason exactly. I could give you notes if you'd like. So anyone here saying that no one comes and mentions anything else and it's just a cell phone or it's just this. It's not just this. My daughter's afraid to go in the bathroom because there's girls in the bathroom that are bigger that can kick my butt, that are in the 8th grade. And my daughter's scared to death because when she goes into the girl stares at her and tells her, get the hell out. There's drugs in the bathroom. Period. My kid will give the name and who it is. If I made her, she'd give you the name and who it is. I'm not gonna do that. My son is at the high school. He got bullied at the middle school too. He doesn't get bullied anymore because he's 6'2" or 275 pounds. Someone bullies him. I already told him, you never put your hands on somebody, but if someone puts your hands on you there, you deal with it. If you don't, you can't worry about some other kid jumping in, whatever. There's a ton of violence at both schools. But the problem we have is, all we get is one word, incident. I'm so sick of the word incident, I never want to see it again. Once, twice, 3 times a week, incident. We don't know what goes on, what happened. Incident, everything's okay. Then I get my daughter coming home, yeah, with pictures sometimes, or videos, or she'll tell me, here, look at this video. And the incident that was nothing is a kid getting a living beat out of him in a hallway, and there's blood and a mess and 4 bruisers outside. So my daughter is that scared to go to school for no other reason than she's afraid to be there. There's a problem, and just the cell phone thing's not gonna fix it.
I said that, absolutely right,
I mean,
absolutely right.
and I feel like this just got all, not just by us, but by you, got just all blasted right onto cell phones. The culture, someone, I remember I read it somewhere, I think it was Fiona, that she wanted to change the culture. It's like one of the first things that was ever said in the meetings. I get it that you want to change the culture, but the culture, this isn't all just for cell phones. I don't think the cell phones help when there's videos everywhere, but I also heard you guys say that you kind of care how it looks for the town. It doesn't look good for the town when someone is on TikTok and they've got 500,000 views of a fight going on in Torrington High School or Torrington Middle School. You're right, it doesn't look good. So I have to be suspicious. That's why you don't want the phones there. Why? Because you don't want anyone to see what really goes on at the schools. Because we don't even find out as parents what really goes on until our kids tell us, or my kid's friend or whoever comes to my house, or a group of girls stopped over my house. All I had was stories all night long. Not just stories, pictures, videos, TikToks, you name it. And you're right, they all came from the phone because they had the phone with them and could do it. And yes, my daughter does text me when there's a lockdown, and she says, we're locked down, I'm scared. What am I gonna do? From now on, what I gotta do is if I hear anything about a lockdown, I'm gonna come to the school. So they're gonna have to deal with parents coming into the school, calling the school constantly when I gotta talk to my daughter, or I feel I need to speak to my daughter, or I think my daughter needs to speak to me. I don't think this is just, without the parents behind you, this is not gonna work. I don't care how you put it, what statistics. I agree with what you're saying, by the way. Everyone's brain is melted at this point with phones and computers and technology in general. Look around us, I mean, seriously. Use the cell phone to save the day tonight when Jason wanted to call and he put the phone next to the microphone. I mean, it proves it. But there's a lot of other things going on in the school, and it's not just the phones. And it would be nicer, I think, and a lot better if you came out and said, we want to fix this whole mess. And this is a big part of it, rather than just the underpouches, that's it, you don't like it, tough. That's it, we're gonna charge you if you don't want like it or something happens to them. And then your parents they're telling the kids how to do this to them, because they're gonna wreck them, they're gonna do this. I mean, I've read studies in New York City, every school's got it. I got friends that have kids in school there. I asked them, he said, some of the schools it works really good. He said, some of the schools it doesn't work at all because the kids destroy them nonstop. But I hate to be disrespectful to you because I know how hard you work, and I'm really not a disrespectful person, but I do have a temper, and
Join the crowd.
it's been building. It's
You're
been
right.
building, and honestly, what it comes down to is it seems like
We will fix the problem, I
I'm
promise.
hoping this
Everybody here
helps fix
is
the
addressing
problem.
every aspect you're talking about.
But
Cell phones from the teacher level, the education level, those consume most of the issues by the teachers. Get the teachers to teach, enforce the rest of the policies. And every time there is an incident, we need an email, because you don't know how many parents will tell me what's going wrong. Then comes time for them to actually file something on the record, and they won't do it.
I get it. My wife's a school teacher. She's taught for 23 years in Bristol. And so we get it. We know my wife knows the laws, the IEP, 504, for years. I mean, we're getting to the point, honestly, like sending my kids somewhere else, both of them. They just like Torrington. My son loves playing football. He doesn't want to lose his friends. My daughter loves her friends, but at the same time, I don't want to send my kids to a school where they're afraid to be there. Or where they think they have to be big enough to be able to go there. So
Their budget recommends.
if I've seemed disrespectful, I apologize, but this has been building. I think the smartest thing that anyone said all tonight, was at least for the high school for sure, is to start this next year. So you guys can put some policies and a way to back it up. Because I don't see how you're gonna back this up if you have no parents, or even if it's a quarter of the parents don't agree with you or hate enough to personally destroy coaches, not for themselves, so the kids don't do it or
They won't have it.
whatever. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you were respectful.
You did a good job. It's McKenna.
No. Any other comments from George?
Mike Mosul is raising his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Just a couple of points. I believe, Gary, if you could email me all those studies, I'd love to read it.
I'll scan them.
I like reading stuff about statistics and stuff like that. That would really interest me. I can't speak on the middle school because none of my kids, when they went through the middle school, ever had a cell phone, and I can't speak on that. But as you all know, it's always been said at high school, we're preparing the students to enter the real world, college, work if they don't go to college, what have you. In college, it's encouraged to use their cell phones to take notes, to study, to record lectures. The cell phone's going to be 100% part of their day in the college dorm room, in the college classroom. In work, the same thing. I have a laptop at my desk at work. I also have my cell phone with my work email. I can contact bosses, supervisors, engineers, what have you. I can't walk around the shop with a laptop, and which was stated before. Oh, if we get these laptops, is it going to make it easier that we don't have to use cell phones all the time? You can't walk around with a laptop. Email, the notifications, and stuff like that. So if we're taking away the cell phones from the kids at school, it's not preparing them at all. It's handcuffing them, and then when they get to college, they're going to have zero clue at all. Not to mention that there was a statement made earlier about, most of the 60% of the problems in the high school, I believe it was, are based on problems with cell phones during the day. What's keeping somebody from not having a cell phone and starting a problem by word of mouth? That Thursday when we had the protesting at the high school, my daughter texted me, terrified, because she heard through the hallway, unsubstantiated, obviously, that cops were tackling and arresting children, because that is what came down the hallway. Not on text message, not on TikTok, not on a phone call. Just by word of mouth, progressing down the hallway. So my 14-year-old daughter, almost in tears, terrified over this. What happens when you take that ability away, and now you have completely terrified children, students, and no way to process that situation. And also, I believe Gary said this, the figure was what, 180,000 a year with the opening and locking and unlocking of the pouches. Again, I can't speak in the middle school, but for 5 to 6% of the student body in the high school, $180,000 seems like a terrible investment on a business standpoint.
No, the cost of the other pouches are 13 for each, I think. The point of my discussion about the community was, if you have to unlock all the kids in the cafeteria and then make sure they're locking it, because you can't have them wandering the halls, because then it's a real problem. That's where you have to have the stuff. That's all.
But that cost would be reflected in the locking and unlocking at the beginning and end of the day then instead.
Well, not to the extent. We have one person there already. High school might have 2 people, maybe 3. But again, if you go on the schools that I've called, the principals that have incorporated this, not a one has had if the administration, the people in charge of the school enforce the policy and the discipline, there are great results. If we fail, Mr. Marchand, it will be one of the fellows, if they fail, then it's on us.
And
I don't believe he will. I do not see him failing, but that's an administrative issue and we're not doing our job. I don't believe he'll fail.
Well, I mean,
Or
the
Mrs.
cell phone
Lewis.
policy up to this point has failed, but what I'm saying is, sorry, I lost what I was saying. Well, the cell phone policy up to this point has failed because it hasn't been completely enforced by everybody in the administration. So there's no basis to say that this isn't going to fail.
You know, just real quick, it's been a progression if you read the research and studies. And it started when all the apps like the TikToks and the Instagrams came out, 2011, 2012, is where it really started. And as the technology advanced and the kids were, and they're addicted to those apps. It's been something that's just rolled through the schools around the country, and we are where we are because, not that we took our eye off the ball, we did, I guess, but the technology's gotten so far ahead of the school systems that there's no more ability to monitor or control what goes on, including with laptops. So, but anyway, there will still be.
And also, when this whole thing started, it does, and it's, to me, just even talking about this, it does sound like it is 100% because trying to lock up cell phones. And in the beginning, I was talking to a lot of parents, a lot of people, Facebook, what have you, and the original outcry was not so much because, oh, we're locking up the cell phones, was because there was a questionnaire that was sent around the schools at the beginning of the year. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the Yonder pouches were on the questionnaire. I'm not 100% sure, I didn't see it. But there were other issues that were touched upon on those questionnaires that seemed to be fluffed off in lieu of getting the Yonder pouches. I understand we're getting the new school. I understand there's a lot of things that are going to change once the new school is built. But at the time being, there was stuff that should have been addressed. And this is what the outcry was originally, is that we were taking the money for these Yonder pouches and moving it and using it in that instead of using to maybe fix the bathrooms up, maybe get a little bit better equipment or more equipment to get the kids learning better during the school time instead of share supplies throughout the school day.
Mr. Mosel, you touched on there are other issues and they aren't being addressed. They are being addressed. It's just that it takes time and everything is being.
I understand that.
Just because you don't see that something is not happening doesn't mean nothing's happening behind the scenes.
And I completely understand that. I was just letting you guys know the outcry wasn't just because we're taking our kids' cell phones away. There was more basis to it on underlying issues than just the cell phone. That just happened to be the stepping point, was because it was the cell phones with the Yonder pouches. It could have been anything that was done in lieu of this other stuff.
So just for everybody here, and at any time, certainly if there is bullying or your children are afraid or our students are afraid, please contact teachers, administrators. They are there to help you, your guidance counselors, your social workers. You have a whole team of people. So we don't want our students to be afraid. We want our students to be happy to come to school every day and for it to be a positive experience. As we've seen our students responding, coming up, speaking very respectfully, articulately, certainly on the task force, they did as well. And it's been a very nice interaction back and forth. So please, this is not obviously the place to air your individual concerns, but share that at the site level so that they can address those. I think that makes a huge difference. They'll know what the scenario is. They'll know what your students' schedule is. The teachers, the administrators are there every single day. So reaching out to those folks can make a huge difference. And obviously we are continuing to work on what's going on in the district to make it better. That's our goal, academically, socially, emotionally, to offer the very best.
Susan.
Everyone might be saying the same thing. You're gonna talk to the grant? Go ahead.
Just I want to clarify, because everyone keeps talking about the grant that the kids took the survey on. The grant that the kids took the survey on is a Kids Speak grant that was for $20,000 and has nothing to do with the grant that the Yonder is being paid out of. So I just want to clarify that for the record, because there's a lot of confusion on that. The other thing that I really also want people to know is, you know, just because we don't individually agree with you doesn't mean that we're not listening to you and taking it under advisement. Everyone on the board reads every word of every email we get, and we take it under advisement along with all the other information we have. So I don't want you to think that we're not reading those, because we all do and we take it seriously. I think a lot of us have lost a lot of sleep over all of this. But all of the information that we have is what leads us to these decisions. And, you know, we receive emails from people, you know, saying that they contact their kids during the day, just as an example. So we read it all, we take it all under advisement. We're trying to really start to address the problem one by one so that all of the kids have a good experience. So even though people may not be looking at it this way, we all do actually come from a good place and want our schools to be the best they can be.
Okay, one last one. We want to go home.
I just have a quick couple of statements, really, and I just kind of to your name. My name is Jennifer Traver, and I have one sophomore and I have a graduate. And Gary, you're like the most controversial, I think, and I think that's why everyone kind of. Because some of your comments are very they're very harsh. You know what I mean? Especially like I think Mindy was saying, like when you say things about the town. I do take that personally too. I work as a realtor in town. That's one of my jobs here. So I sell a lot of properties here, and I give big ups to Torrington. I give big ups to all the schools because I have one now who's 9, and I have one that actually 2 of them had Mrs. Toder when I came here and I moved here, and she's amazing. I have nothing but amazing good ups for her. And then I had the other one over there, had my Aiden, and she's amazing, and I love Miss LaVersa. So I have all good things to say about Torrington, and I sell houses here all the time. So I also don't like when you put that negativity on the town, right? Because I don't think it's just cell phones. I think it's a lot of things. And I also am very sorry that you had horrible things happen to family members, but you have to understand that even these kids sitting here and even the parents, there's a lot of good that comes from cell phones too. And I'm not saying in school, but I'm just saying in general. Like I know my children, they see something, they say something, they're big into sports. So when they see teammates or friends struggling, they reach out. They reach out to a parent, they reach out to an advisor, you know, and I know my kids when they're worried. My oldest is graduated, but he had a mouth in this school, and he would go and he would tell anyone if there was a danger or if he was worried. So I think everyone is, you know, just so upset about this cell phone. So things are coming out right now, but I think we're not giving the school enough credit, because I do think parents tell the school things and things do get addressed. I just think right now it's coming on hot and heavy because we were just told like this is gonna happen and we're taking your kids' cell phones. And I know you're not taking them, you're locking them. I get it. I know what the Yonder is. I get it. I have clients from New York. I get it, you know, I get it. I just feel like I know your statistics on the bad, but you know the statistics on the good too. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying, because there are some. Also, you said you walk the halls and like all the kids have it. There are so many photos that Torrington High School posts. They had the coffee truck come, not one child, and I swear to you, I went back and re-looked, had an AirPod in, not one child had a cell phone. I'm just saying, if you go back and look, there are so many good things that the school does do to just try and show. So I'm just saying,
I've got
like,
6 kids that.
I'm just saying, some of your comments really, you know, some of these parents that do come, that do show up, they really hit home, you know, especially when I listen to the board meetings and you're like, download pornography. I'm sorry if that happened to some of your children, but that's really harsh. My children aren't sitting in school downloading pornography. They might be on their phones, but if they're doing that, they're in the privacy of their own home. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's very harsh. It's just a harsh comment because I am an involved parent. So it's just you're just very controversial. So I think it makes it very difficult so us parents come on very strong, right? Because we are all mama bears here, and these are our babies. So you're right, not enough people are here to show you that. And I get you're trying to say like, oh, we only got 12 emails. But in the grand scheme of things, when it comes down to it, those mama bears are gonna protect, what they think they should, because you're so strong on your verbiage. And yeah, the verbiage is just, it's there, you know what I mean? So I just think just a little bit
I think it's.
gentler.
See, what have I been telling you?
Gary,
Thank you.
you have to, I get it,
Gary,
Gary.
agree with her.
Thank you.
And now it's Jess's turn.
And yeah, you're right, yeah.
But I'm not gonna change.
Jess.
So.
Thank you.
First of all, I wanna give you guys credit because when we first started this back and forth thing that frankly was not on the agenda, I thought, oh no, this might get a little out of hand, right? Because I've seen a lot of videos of this happen in other places. And so I really want to give you guys credit. I think this was constructive and I appreciate it. Whether you guys see this or not, this is actually a very pro-discipline board.
Yes.
The thing that happens, there's a few things that happen with discipline. Things don't come to us, specific student incidents don't come to us unless they rise to the level of expulsion. And like quite a few of us spent, I think, 6 hours last week. I spent 6 hours on my morning off in expulsion hearings. Okay.
I took the day off.
So, yes.
Personal, unpaid.
Yeah, I mean, people are literally taking vacation days to do these hearings. And so in those hearings, we hear things that are not able to be communicated with you because it's privileged student information, but we are aware of issues that you may not be aware of. And if your students haven't seen these issues, that's fantastic. Like, honestly. There are a lot of things that happen with discipline that are governed by state statute. And so a lot of our policies are governed by state statute and we don't necessarily have say over some of those things. And so if you ever really want to get frustrated, go and read some of the stuff that our state is requiring and our Department of Education is requiring related to student discipline. That being said, so thank you guys. Can we get back to, because I'm concerned we have a board meeting tomorrow. If people are really thinking about starting for the middle school after April vacation, we haven't figured out how that's going to happen.
So that's the next step. Okay, so thank you, everyone. I'm cutting you off. Next is from the committee, a recommendation. Do you want to make a recommendation?
Yes, I would like to make a recommendation that we move to the full board. To begin the yonder pouches on April 25th at Torrington Middle School. And hold off or, refrain from doing it at the high school until the first next school year.
And then
And work with.
and draft a
and
policy
draft a
around that.
policy around that. That we will.
Second?
I'll second. Well, we're not.
Well,
Just
not
to
voting. Do you agree to move it to the full board? It can be discussed there.
Yes, I think that if we are going to consider this tomorrow, I think we really need to hear from middle school administrators and our superintendent, assistant superintendent, if they feel that this is legitimately feasible to start in April. Because I feel like this timeline
Absolutely.
is very aggressive and I'm very concerned that we may not have everything in this school
Absolutely. So do you agree then to send it to the full board?
for further discussion. I don't agree with the recommendation.
You can vote. I'm not vote, but you can, do you agree with the recommendation to bring?
I'm with Jess, it's a very aggressive timeline, they need to get moving. And I think there's a lot, we learned a lot of information tonight from our executive session. What we heard here tonight, there's a lot of things to consider, and that's a very tight timeline to get that done.
So we will bring it to the full board. Know that when it goes to the full board and the full board has a meeting, there's a public comment. There's no back and forth like there is within the policy committee, okay? So whatever the board decides as a full board, as a group, it will come back to policy and then the policy will be drafted. Okay?
So the policy committee, just to be clear, for me and for everybody, the policy committee is asking the board tomorrow to consider almost strictly implementation dates.
Correct.
And then the policy committee will discuss the actual policy at a later date after it's conferred with legal counsel, et cetera.
Correct. Okay. Yes.
A question related to the policy. Does Yonder have, and Fiona and Gary might know this better, does Yonder have a template or draft policy that we can look at
Yes.
to start? We had, okay.
It does.
We will-
And
we
then
will-
hand it
we
off
will-
to our
We
attorneys.
will, we will look at it, yes. That's the process.
Okay.
Okay, okay. Topics for future meetings. How about the cell phone policy? And
I think
anything else
cell
that
phone
comes-
policy and the affiliated policies with that, school discipline.
Yeah.
And there was another one, I thought she said.
Yeah, everything that's associated. Okay, comments for the good of the order. We'll start with Kathy.
Thank you for coming out and sharing your thoughts with us. And please know that, it is a process. And I think while we didn't respond when you were here at the regular board meeting, that's just the process. And certainly we did listen, which is why the task force came into being. And again, I thank all of the students and the parents and the teachers and administrators who participated. So it's a good meeting, a lot of thoughts up there. So thank you.
I already said it a bunch, but just in general, like, I understand the frustration with maybe not receiving response to emails, and I do want you guys to know that, I mean, I guess I can only speak for myself, but I'm 99% sure every one of us reads every word of every email we get. So I know I do, I'm pretty sure. So we do appreciate that feedback.
And also, each board member is not the Board of Ed. The board as a whole, the 10 of us, is the Board of Ed. So actually the chair speaks for the board. So if you have concerns, you go to the chair.
Thanks for everybody for coming out. A lot of information was gathered. It's not gonna be an easy process. Yonder is coming. I just think people need to be a little bit more open-minded. There's a lot of good for it. Nobody, believe me, I cannot stand the amount of time my kids spend on phones. They're good students, but I think they could be better if they did not spend 7-8 hours of screen time on TikTok or Snapchat. There's a lot of other problems that come from cell phones that someone mentioned the data. There is a lot of data that directly relates a lot of the problems in the schools to the cell phones. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the Yonder, but I think hearing the information I've heard the last month, I've only been on this board maybe 2 months now. I'm still on the fence. But I think hearing all the comments and the data, I think could be some good that comes out of this. And I hope the kids are open-minded too, that it's not a punishment. It really isn't a punishment. You guys need to learn. I don't know how many people here, maybe you guys look at the screen time. It's almost appalling, like where kids spend 6 hours, 8 hours of screen time on their cell phones. And I tell my kids, you just took 4 of those hours, just 4 of them. I'm not saying eliminate the cell phones when you're done with school. Just take 4 of them and do a little bit more harder.
That includes
School.
Spotify though, remember that.
No, I'm strictly social media. I break it down per app. Thank you. Just 4 hours, just take half that time away. You could be doing so much better. Just please try and have an open mind. With all these people here, they are trying to better the school, better the students. That's their intent. They're not here to punish your kids. So please have an open mind.
Gary, can you be short?
No.
No, that wasn't long.
No.
Ask your fear about Gary.
No, I said, well, but I hope the public realizes that. And my approach is, I live in Torrington. I'm not moving out of Torrington. I'll be one of the few left that's not going to Florida. But
Excuse me, point of order, it's after 9, we have to extend the meeting, motion to extend.
second.
You can't second.
Second,
All in favor?
5 minutes.
They all wanna go home.
5 minutes, Gary, you have one. Go.
Stop talking, stop interrupting me. Nobody wants Torrington to succeed better than I do, and this board is committed. Again, I said I'll die on these hills, we're gonna fix the problems, but I never bash Torrington, and I think the principals will tell you that. I spend every cent I have extra trying to better Torrington, and I will continue to do that, and we will fight for more money, and I've done that since day one on the board. I haven't had much luck at City Hall, but if you'd all show up, it might be easier. If nobody shows up.
Yeah, just really quickly, I just have to point out, I find it really ironic that I'm frequently accused of being the grandstander on the board. And I haven't spent a moment speaking with you all until now, not that I don't love you. And I also find it ironic actually that I'm probably by a mile the most liberal member of the board. And yet here I am sort of being really oppositional about cell phone policy. But the truth is, you know, like I said earlier, we're here now. And while it certainly wouldn't be my preference to be moving in this direction on cell phones, I think we're getting to the point where we might actually make some progress next time on sort of doing something as a group that might actually work out. So here's hope. Thank you.
Only that I'm so happy my youngest son is 42. We never had to deal with it.
So,
No, thank you for everyone's comments. Very much appreciated.
echo what Susan, thank you. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. It was wonderful being on the task force, listening to that group of parents, of students, administrators, staff. And thank you for taking the time this evening. We really, really appreciate getting your input. It does make a difference.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So